All right. Hi, everyone. It's good to see all of you here. Let me introduce myself first. I'm Rishika. I'm an associate professor of marketing at the Poole College of Management. I'm also the director of the Master of Management Marketing Analytics program here at the Poole College. This is a relatively new program. We started about a year and a half ago, and we have grown into a good sized program, over 40 plus students now within a year. So we're super pleased about that. And last year we started via this program, our guest speaker series that has been received well. So all of you today are participating in one of the installments of our guest speaker series. So really excited that you guys are all joining us today. And now I can introduce my fellow hosts here as well. I have Allison Anthony, who's the assistant director of the program. Allison, you want to say hi?
Sure. Thanks, Rashika. Hi, everybody. I'm Allison Anthony. I'm the Associate Director of the Master of Management program here. So I work with both of our concentrations. We have the Marketing Analytics concentration and then the Risk and Analytics, which just launched this year. So excited to be here, have been at Poole College for just about 3 years now. So welcome, everybody. We're really excited that you're here, and thanks in advance to Emily and Basiru for helping us out today. And I'll turn it over now to Emily Gower, who is one of our MMA students currently.
Thank you, Allison, and thank you, Rashika. Yes, I am Emily Gower. I am a current student in the Master of Management concentration in Marketing Analytics. And so thank you for inviting me to moderate this conversation today with Professor Basiru Usman. And just a couple of kind of pre-webinar pieces of information for you all. So the topic, as I'm sure you all know, but just as a reminder, is the use of predictive analytics and future of marketing. And so we welcome questions from the audience throughout the entire webinar. I will be asking some questions from Professor Usman, but please feel free to chime in the chat throughout, and we will try and address them at that time. But if not, we are leaving some time at the end for question and answers as well. So if we can't get to it during the course of the conversation, please know that we will answer it at the end. But I will turn it over to Professor Usman, if you would like to just kind of give us some of your academic background, what brought you to academia, and share some of your history.
Hello, everyone. Excuse me. Like it is said, my name is Basiru Usman. I'm a teaching assistant professor here at Poole College of Management, and I am going to share my screen just to make it easy of what I'm going to talk about. So just give me a moment. I should be able. Alison, I think you need to give me, you need to allow me to share the screen. I think it's disabled.
Oh, sure. Here we go.
So as she's doing that, let me quickly introduce myself. So I am originally from a small town in Africa. It's called Safi, somewhere in northern part of Nigeria. And I started my academic journey actually when I was in high school. I love teaching. So when I was in 4th grade, I would try to go to the 2nd grade and make sure that they understand what they need to do when they come to the 3rd grade and when they come to the 4th grade. So this journey I have started a long time ago, and I still keep connection with some of my students from that time. So for example, I have somebody who is now doing well. He graduated from university and he is working. He reached out to me some couple of months ago, and I was, whoa, are you still alive? Yeah. So we chatted. So I love teaching, and that is why I choose academia. And in general, I love analytics. So that is why I choose analytic background. But let me share my screen so that it will be easier for you to see what I'm normally doing. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, let me. Okay. Can you see my slides? Okay, yes. Excellent. So this is, in case if you're wondering where in Africa, I try to put a graph so that you can see. This is almost at my place. And so academic background, before joining Poole College of Management, I have 2 master's degree and a PhD. And I like analytics since from day one. So when I was doing my PhD, I tried to do what is going on in markets, which is neural network. So I do analysis of Hopfield neural network. And for those of you that are wondering, what is that? So I try to put some pictures just to try to explain that. So we interact with decision support system. For example, how do we optimize giving patient the right treatment based on his background and based on his conditions. So this is just a simple example of decision support system. And what happened is that if you use neural network, you can improve this significantly. So just to tell you what is happening behind the screen, we are the ones behind the screen, meaning that the neural network are the one helping this decision support system. Another example of where we use neural network is when you are trying to retain a customer. So you are using marketing, and of course we know that customer comes and leaves, and you're trying to make sure that you retain as many customers as you can. Well, that's what we call customer modeling. Well, behind the screen again, we are there helping you achieve that. So in case if you're wondering, what we do is Hopfield neural network. And I like to put this graph because it's nicer to see and it's kind of telling you what is happening. So what you are seeing on the left-hand side is the neural network in the olden days, but things are evolving, technology is moving so fast. And now we have what we call deep learning, which is another field of application of neural network. And simple example is image reconstruction or identification, if you can call it. So this is all types and applications of in general neural network. So I hope you get sense of what I do and my academic background. Emily.
Yeah, no, that and that makes sense to me. You're kind of talking about the treatment in healthcare, but maybe the treatment in customer interaction as well too. So that customer engagement and the overlap in those unique disciplines.
Yes, I have that. I have that for you, Emily. So when we start discussing in details, I'm going to share how you can use similar, the way you use it in healthcare, you can do it in customer modeling. So I have some of that. Yeah.
All right, well, let's kind of jump into the landscape of marketing analytics as it is today. And, obviously, as mentioned, anybody who has questions along the way, please feel free to put them in the chat. But just to kick us off, you've touched on maybe one of the topics that you're currently researching. What are some of the current topics researchers are addressing in the realm of marketing analytics, in addition to neural networks?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. So I would start by saying that analytics now is almost everywhere, right? So with the technology and how we are collecting massive data in almost every places, we are trying to make sure that we utilize that data. So some of the things we do see that are really coming up in marketing analytics are really large, but I try to summarize a few of those. So for example, all of us, when we open our browser, we type something, sometimes we get an advert, right? Or a campaign like, do you want to buy this? Something is coming up, new computer has been launched, something like that. The question is, how do they know that I need a computer, not a car? How do they know that I need, let's say, shoes, not glasses? So this type of personalized marketing is very, very important for marketers. And so that is what we call recommendation filtering. So let me just show you on my screen. So this is what I have. So in this recommendation filtering, what is happening is that you can either do it between individual or you can do it between products. So for example, if I purchase something that looks similar to something that I didn't buy, they can recommend it to me. Let's say I get a Mac computer and they think that's another type of computer is leading the market now, they can send that advert to me. Or it could be if person A and person B have a similar profile, whatever person A purchased, they are going to advertise that to person B. So this is in general what we call recommendation filtering. This is never going away. It has been there for quite a long time. The only difference we are seeing now is that they are using data to make sure that they do this personally, I would say. So for example, you don't want to advertise beer to somebody that is not drinking beer. You don't want to do that, right? So how do we create a personalized marketing profile? And this is where we do recommendation filtering to make sure that we have group individual into a similar group so that we can advertise something that's really important and something that they can purchase. So that is one. Another thing we are seeing now is relatively new, which is using the location of our customer. So let's say I'm currently in Raleigh and probably there has been promos going around Raleigh places. How do I know? And how do they know I'm in Raleigh? So normally what happens is that you download their shop app, their mobile app, right? So you go to the mobile app and you check what they have, what promo they have, what are they selling, what are the product they have in store. What happens is that if you give them consent to see your location, then they can do what we call proximity marketing. So instead of just telling you that something is happening in California, why not tell them something is happening in Raleigh so that you can just quickly go and check? So this is what we call proximity marketing. And this is changing life. This is relatively new and it's changing life. Another thing we are seeing in marketing analytics is all the time it is happening, like I said, customer retention with the computing power. I can just open a shop online. I don't have to have a physical shop. I can open a shop online and put my things in my house and then try to put them online. And if you want, I can send them to you. So what happened is that it is good that we can do that, but on the other side, that means we have many competitors now. Instead of just having 2 shops to compete between themselves, now you have 20. How do you stay ahead? How do you make sure that if you don't get as many customers as you can, at least make sure that you don't lose them, right? So this is another field that is not going away, and still this is an active research field in marketing analytics. Emily, does that give you a little bit of what is going on?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And thank you for that explanation. I actually, in the recommendation system, I was thinking about my own experience on some platform like Amazon at the bottom, where you're looking at something and it says, you know, prior customers also purchased. And so kind of the real life visual or example of that personalized recommendation system based on maybe product and profile. So that's very interesting. And so my next question, I think you have touched on, and I know the answer for myself, but why should kind of other people care about marketing analytics? You know, I know why I love analytics, and you've discussed why you love them as well. But for somebody who is new to the field or gaining interest, what is, you know, kind of your thought on why it's important?
Yes, so this is also important, right? Because whenever we want to do something, whether it is you want to take a new course in college, or you want to take a new course online, or it's professional certificate, what you are trying to do is, what do I get out of that, right? So why should somebody just care about marketing analytics? Now, before I proceed, I have a few things I want to show you visually. Think about what I just said. Lastly, right? You have so many shops opening now. You don't have to have a physical store where you have to pay a rent or whatever. So that make it easier for people to start business, which means you have more competitors now. The question is, if you leverage marketing analytics, you are going to always stay ahead. So that is number one. And let me share with you a few things that are currently going on in terms of marketing analytics. So this is a research that has been published, and it shows that people that are using what I just said, proximity marketing, and so these people are in retail business, what happened is that traffic is very, very important in their field. When they use retail marketing and proximity marketing, what happened is that they are able to reduce the traffic about 15%, which is huge if you think about that, because you don't want customer to be waiting for 2-3 hours before you can serve him. And this is really important to them. The other side, though, is the most interesting one, which is, how do I compete? I have many peers that are selling the same product. How do I stay ahead? How do I generate more revenue? And this research also shows that if you do marketing analytics correctly, you are going to get around 73% of likelihood of purchase, which is awesome. In this bunch of shops, you are having 73% likelihood of purchase. This is superb. This is really good. And again, this is a marketing research. And for those that are interested, we can share with them so that they can read for themselves. But this is something really going on. So I hope this give you a sense of, well, marketing analytics is really good. It's really good.
And just for the sake of like full explanation, could you describe what lift is speaking to here, this 15% lift in retail foot traffic?
Yes,
my
so
understanding would be kind of like margin change, right?
Yes. So what we are saying is that, let's say you have 100 people waiting online to be served because they are coming from far, they need large quantity of products, and you have to have them line up and then load what they have to leave. What happened is that we know time is very, very important for our customers. So if we can reduce the traffic, so the number of people waiting by 15%, that is going to change the way our customer would review us, right? Because obviously, if a customer waits longer time, the chances that he's going to write that in review, they are good, but you have to wait so hour to get something. And we know people don't have time, so they don't like waiting. So what I mean by lifting 15% is that the quantity of people waiting to be served is dropped drastically by 15%.
Great. And so that means that individuals kind of prioritized you're prioritizing those who would more likely convert to that retail foot traffic or positive review.
Exactly.
Okay,
which
great.
is good, right? We are getting two things for the same thing, right? First of all, we are servicing, so in no time, which means we don't have to have large manpower. Plus, we get good reviews, which means our business is going to boost in a way.
Yeah, and then everything downstream of that ends up with positive brand image, positive interaction. All of the dots connect there. Well, thank you for that explanation. So kind of touching on marketing analytics, its place in industry and relationship to consumers. There are many instances of the positive power of marketing analytics, but as is with any emerging science, there are instances of perhaps negative repercussions related to trial and error. Anything that is kind of experimentation can end up with a negative externality. So with that in mind, how do you think marketers strike that balance, right, of an emerging, evolving science while also maintaining kind of that integrity of analytics as it relates to consumers?
Yes, so this is also a very good question because whenever you are using data, you have to be very, very, very careful, right? When you observe something, that doesn't just tell you that A causes B. Let's say we have a relationship between A and B. For example, let me give you a simple example. Let's say you just open a new shop. Let's say you already have your shop by the side of a university. And what happened is that the university just tried to open a new, let's say, gym by the side of your shop. And what happened is that right after they are doing that, you are trying to remodel your shop. So now you have remodeling effects plus people are moving right beside you. How do you know if it is because of remodeling or it is because you have now new customers just coming to your place? So this is where we have to be careful when we're using the data. A happens, B happens at the same time, doesn't mean that A causes B. We have to be careful with that. And another thing is that you are using data. So you have to be very, very careful with the way you use data, more especially this is a personal data. You have to make sure that you are using this data in the right way. I believe I have a few things I want to share with that, which is, well, all the things we are doing, we want to make sure that we have, what do you call it? We have the trust of our customers, because if a customer trusts you, that means he is probably going to stay. He's not going to move to a new provider. Number two is that you want to also give a good impression to that customer so that he can share that with his friends that are probably not your customers, and they would come to start shopping with you. Now, the good news is that, well, as long as we do this right, we don't have to worry about losing customers. What we have to do from our end is making sure that we use, if we're using model, we use them correctly. If we are collecting data, we collect correct data. If we are sharing data, we should share data, but based on customer consent, which means you have to tell the customer that, hey, we are sharing this. What do you think? Sometimes many industry are now giving even incentive. Hey, I want to share this. What do you think? But you get something out of that. And most of the time, the customer will say yes, as long as it's not personal something. And right after that story, you get a bunch of customers showing up that you do. So yes, we have to be careful with the big data. We are leveraging big data. We are using tools. We are using marketing analytics, but we have to use it for the right purpose. Because if we don't use it for the right purpose, then we are going to have a problem. So I have a few things I want to share with our audience. Some guidelines of how we make sure that our customers are aware of what we are doing. So number one, if you use data, you have to make sure that this data I'm going to use for my marketing strategy, I get it through the customer consent. It's not like, well, he signed something that he didn't know. No, it has to be very, very clear. Number two, you have to give them full control of something they want to share. Number three, make it easy for them to change their privacy. If for some reason they don't want to do it again, well, they can just turn it off. So this would make your customer comfortable, and they would be comfortable with how you use their data. Emily, does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah. So it sounds like really asking appropriate questions based on the data that you have, test, a lot of preventative measure, and then also the transparency of that interaction with the customer and control over their information. And I think, we see a lot of this in the news, both good and bad. And so, the companies that you see positive news articles about seem to take this approach. So what advice do you have for individuals who are interested in a career in marketing analytics?
I have a lot of advice.
All of the good that comes with it, and how it is kind of a new frontier as it relates to marketing.
Yeah, so let me start with the good news. The good news is this is going to be a demanding career. So if you go to the very level of statistics, you would see that they have this projection that by 2031, there would be an increase of about 19% of marketing analytics expert, which means if you are in the field, by that time, you already have a lot of experience, and here you go. Number two, we have many things we can do with marketing analytics. So I believe I have a few things I want to share with them. So remember that the whole idea of using marketing analytics is to improve business. And right after we started, I would say people started using marketing analytics, they realized that, well, industry that are using marketing analytics are staying ahead of those that are not using marketing analytics. So if you want to go into the career, please do, this is the right time, because there has been demand for the marketing analyst. Plus, and a piece of advice I'm going to give you is that please try to understand your role. So for example, what should I expect if I study marketing analytics? And there are a bunch of things you can expect from them. But one thing is that make sure that you understand how to use statistical softwares to give reports and write summaries. And also keep in mind that you would be creating dashboards. So try to understand all the things that would really make you stand out of the crowd. And as long as you have that skills, I believe sky is your limit. So yeah, marketing analysis is really cool, and it's demanding right now. But if you are moving into the career, don't just get the certificate. Make sure that you understand your role and try to polish it a little bit so that you can stand out of the crowd.
And we had a question in the chat here about the article referenced, I believe it was a few slides back, the
Okay.
Harvard Business Review.
Okay.
And so maybe toward the end of the conversation, we can put the links, or if you have time now, we can drop the links in the chat of those articles.
Yes, we
Was
can
it the
definitely do
title,
that.
Online Retailers Should Care More About?
Yes, I can do that. Just to speed up the process, how about we are going to just put the links after we finish the webinar so that people can read in there. But definitely, yes, we're going to drop the link. Yes.
Perfect. Great. Thank you. Okay. So we were talking about how firms use analytics and kind of marketing analytics as a career. What kind of tools and technologies are these firms currently using in
Yes. So
collect, store, analyze data?
yes. So you perfectly put it in the right order, right? You collect, you store, and you analyze. So let me start with storing data. Before we do that, by the way, I just want to share with our audience that when you are using marketing analytics, or you are trying to go into marketing analytics career, things that you are going to do, for example, solving problems like how our marketing activity performing today, how can we improve them, how do our marketing activity compare to our competitors, what are they doing that we are not doing, where are they spending their dollars, are we using all the channels they are using, are they leveraging something that we don't and they are staying ahead of us so that we can try to fill in the gap. This is generic. Normally what happens is that you have specific problem. I just give you an example of remodeling your shop. You want to make sure that you are able to set up a correct hypothesis of whether something has really improved. Let's say marketing strategy has really improved your revenue. And to do that, you need a quite bit of skills, which normally we teach our students, and I'm sure anybody taking marketing analytics would go through that. But yeah, this is really generic. I put a generic question just so you know, these are things we normally do. But yes, so in terms, let me come back to your question, Emily. In terms of the tools, let's start with the collection. There are many things you can use for collecting data. You can use mobile apps. You can use, I think people are now using mobile apps quite often to collect data from customers because that is easier. You don't have to wait for somebody to go in, log into his computer in order to get data. If you make it easier for them, then definitely they are going to do that and make it short. Don't try to ask them like 50 questions each. It will take them 2 minutes. No, they are not going to do that. Make sure you make it short and direct it to what you are trying to do. So for example, make sure that you're collecting the right metric. In terms of storing the data, I would say more organizations are now using what we call decentralized system, right? So instead of having a blog in your company where you store your data, no, that is old-fashioned way. It's still going on, but that is not the best way now. What we see normally now is that many organizations are decentralizing their data, which means they have it in cloud. If something happened with their space of work, well, their data is perfectly intact. So they are leveraging clouds like Google storage. They are also using AWS. So for example, if they are collecting data for transactions, they can use that using Dynamo, and then they push the final data into a bucket, S3 bucket, which is Amazon Simple Storage. So this is really going on. So yeah, in terms of storage, we can still do centralized storage, which means we store it in our hard disks and stuff. But the best way now is to do it using cloud. And lastly, in terms of analyzing data, so this is what happened. You have data, well, that depends on the type of data you have, but how do you properly analyze it? So tools we are seeing in analyzing data ranges from statistical tools all the way to using online platforms, because industry are now moving away from requiring heavy analytics, right? I mean, heavy coding. So you don't have to heavily code in order to do a simple report. They can just show you, all you need to do is click this, create summary, and do that, and then you can have your report. So in terms of analyzing the data, we can also divide it into two: visualization and building something. For visualization, people are using like Tableau is trending now, Power BI. in terms of using analyzing the data, we use Python most of the time. We use also Power BI. We also use R. We use SAS. So yeah, the tools are there. But what we are seeing is that companies and individuals are trying to move away from tools that require you to code heavily. So things that are a little bit coding and a little bit point and select, which is cool, which means you don't have to remember all the syntax and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that gives the users the ability to have that point and click, what you see is what you get, but deeper level, they can, add a snippet of code on there that for a particular transformation of data that they know is applicable to the problem that they're looking at.
Yes, Emily. Yes, Emily. Thank you for bringing this up. Let me even share something that's really important for our viewers. So let's use point and click software, which is Tableau. Most of the time you point and click. If you do know how to code, you have one extra layer of advantage, right? Because sometimes you need to create KPIs that are not there in the data. So how do you create them? Well, you have to code. If you don't know how to code, then your hands are tied. Yeah, but yeah, definitely.
So thinking about, you kind of touched on this, data types and methods. Can you talk to us about structured and unstructured data, maybe some examples and differences of techniques and applications to firms? So what is unstructured and structured data? How do the techniques for analyzing kind of differ, and how does this apply to firms in today's market?
Yes. So that is always what we call sacrifice when you're trying to use something, right? So we are using relational database that are really structured, really nice, and we can quickly do our analytics. We can quickly summarize, we can do things, but we cannot store as much information as we needed. So that is a drawback. On the other side of the spectrum, you have unstructured data where you can put videos, audios, whatever you want. But if you want to do analysis, then you have to pay the price. So to put it in short, let me just give you a simple example of structured versus unstructured data. You can think of structured data as employee table in your organization, where you have people names, their social security, phone number, and maybe their salary. And a simple example of unstructured data is your email content. You can attach video, you can attach audio, you can attach whatever, and then you can type plain text. So this is a simple example. What happened is that I believe I have a few things I want to share with our audience in terms of structured data. So this is not in order. I'm going to come back to what I skipped, but think of structured data as something that's really organized. So from day one, you know what you want to do. You know the format you want. That is what we call schema. So you already know what you want. Plus, you have a pre-perceived things that you're going to do with that data. On the other side, which is unstructured data, most of the time, you have no idea how you're going to use that data. You're just keeping it there as a store. So most of the time, we see unstructured data in our data lakes, data warehouse, because like the name suggests, it's just a lake. If I need, then I will go and
take a draw of the water
and then try to move it to the right place, clean it a little bit, and then use it. So yeah, on the other side, we can put whatever we want, many informations, different syntax, different format. But when we want to do analysis, well, we have to pay the price. On the other side, well, we are restricted to put something. We want to add something we can't, but it's good if we want to do analysis. Simple example would be, use case would be if you have a customer relationship management application, most of the time we know what we want to do. You want to book online, well, structured, they will collect some few informations from you. You are opening account or account information, well, they already know what they want from you. On the other side, if you want to do data mining, most of the time you are going to use unstructured data. Plus, think about chatbot. Nobody knows what they're going to do there, right? So it's just raw data and then convert it into speech. And tools we use just to make sure that people have really understanding of what is happening here. Things we use, for example, tools we use in structured data include SQLite, MySQL, OLAP for online analytic processing. On the other side, we have DynamoDB, MongoDB, Hadoop, where we can put our things there. So yes, we need to understand that having unstructured data is not going to solve all our problems, but it's going to help us in a way. And structured data is not going away. So it's still with us because it's good for analytics and stuff like that. So yeah. Does that answer your question, Emily?
Yeah, and actually, when we're talking about unstructured data, it makes me even think of like social media, and a lot of kind of research that I've seen related to social media and unstructured data is like data mining of tweets and kind of sentiment analysis as it relates to larger conversations, maybe certain things that pop up in the news, and kind of skimming information from that and analyzing the sentiment related to that unstructured.
And remember, most of our, sorry to interrupt, but remember, most of our comments, we term them unstructured, because if we are getting customer feedback, sometimes for the photo, sometimes emoji, sometimes audio, sometimes just plain text. So yes, we need to understand that unstructured data is very rich in terms of what we can get out of that. You just perfectly give an example, which is sentiment analysis, which is if you're trying to do social media analytics, you have to come across that. Yeah, which is cool. Yes.
And just kind of walking back, I think you had some information on data types and maybe or not types, I'm sorry, techniques.
Yes.
As it relates to analytics. So just giving you that.
Yes, I do, because I was suspecting someone will be interested in doing this. So this is what is happening, right? In organization, how do they use analytics? Or in general, how do they use data analytics or predictive analytics? What happened is that most organizations are using what we call 4-stage strategy. So number one, you have to understand what you are trying to do, which means identify what you want to measure. Number two, you have to use tools to identify, well, I have historical data. Can I get a sense of what has happened? And now you can look at the current situation and see, what do we have right now? So historical data that will tell you what has happened, and then you can visualize and see what are we seeing right now. And then you can use that data to extrapolate in future and say, well, what should we expect? And it doesn't stop there. So after you do that, what you do is you use your analytics skills to make sure that you address all these questions. Plus, if you need to do something, for example, there is something that is missing that you can't analyze, maybe because of skill gap, make sure that you close that gap. And then you try to say, okay, now that we have a prediction, what should we do? Right? So this is how most organizations are using predictive analytics in marketing most of the time.
So do you see any drawbacks to the current techniques or practices that are used today? Do you have, kind of advice for these techniques on the evolution of marketing analytics in the future?
Yes. So yeah, let me just give you a simple example. We always get this, right? They are still using analytics, but sometimes you get an advert of something that you have never purchased, something that you're probably not going to buy for the rest of your life, but they advertise that for you. How does that come into play? Well, this is what we call the skill gap. We are using techniques, we are using algorithms, but what happened is that we are seeing a drawback in understanding the actual content of the analytical tools. So if you don't use them correctly, you can end up classifying, well, somebody buying, let's say, milk, you can just advertise a cell phone to him. Oh, how is that related? Another thing we are seeing is that even though these two areas, structured data, unstructured data, even though they are really nice, all of them have their drawbacks. So for example, if you are using tools or you are restricted to use structured data, what happened is that, well, you cannot do that much because you cannot store larger contents. You have size restriction, you have content restriction, you have format restriction. So that is one drawback that we see in using relational data, structured data. On the other side, which I touched on a little bit, is that, well, you can put whatever you want, but whenever you want to get something out of that, you have to pay the price. So yes, you can put whatever you want in unstructured data, but the thing is, well, you have to be careful. You really want to put everything there, because the amount of things you put there that are not correlated would translates to how much time you would require if you want to get something out of that data. So yes, they are nice. Everybody is talking about, well, I can use unstructured data, or I can use data lake to put my data. But the drawback is we need to understand that, well, we have to be careful the data we're putting in data lake. And we have to be careful of the data we're putting in structured data. So we have to understand the balance. If we misuse them, then we have to pay the price. So this is one drawback I see, and overemphasizing on, oh, we can do unstructured, we do unstructured. And also we have some limitations of the things we do, like algorithm. One thing that you have to keep in mind is that you are trying to understand customer behavior, which means you need as many parameters as possible. Nobody is going to define the set of parameters that would perfectly define individual, right? So yeah, we can use analytics, but our hands are tied. We can only get some amount of information about customer, and the rest we can't.
Yeah, I agreed. Humans are complicated. So it's hard to say that one person will respond this way and another will respond in the exact same way. And as you were talking about unstructured data, I was thinking about, if somebody tweets something sarcastically, oh, I'm really happy about XYZ, versus the other person who tweets, oh, I'm really happy about XYZ, that might be a symptom of how you start to analyze that unstructured data. And then, make incorrect assumptions about it.
Exactly.
Okay, well, I want to be cognizant of allowing some time for questions. I just have one or two more for you.
Okay.
And I'll combine these last two into kind of one. What research areas do you see that are pushing the boundaries of marketing analytics, and where do you see these opportunities for better analytics in the future?
So I believe this is also important for our viewers, and that is why I try to put something. So for example, the future direction is that we are not using cloud services and cloud analytics as we should. So we should do that. That is one way we can push boundary in terms of marketing analytics. So one example is that there is a platform from SaaS where you can just use it for your customer analytics, which means this is awesome. I don't have to know all this stuff. All I need to do is make sure that I understand how to use the platform. So we are not using that as we should. The second thing is that, well, we know AI is changing life. We have driverless cars now. Why don't we bring that to marketing? How can we do that? Yes, we can do that. So we should do more of machine learning, more of AI in that area. Another place I see things are going to open up is text mining. Almost everybody understands how to analyze quantitative data or something, but like you mentioned, how do I analyze tweets? How do I know that this is really not what he intended, but it's a joke? So this is something that we see that's going to be really popular in future. And another thing is natural language processing. Well, we know what happened, right? If you want to put an appointment, most of the time you are not going to be talking to a real person, right? Oh, is it good? Is it bad? Well, I would put the positive side to this, because sometimes we are humans and we can attach emotion to what somebody says. But think about this natural language processing. They have no emotions, so most of the times they don't shun away our customer. They try to address their questions as they ask them. So I think this is one place we can push the boundaries, and the future is bright.
Yeah, it makes for efficient interaction if you are talking to the chatbot customer service rep trying to solve a problem. Well, those are all the questions that I have. I open it up to anybody who would like to type one in the chat. I've got a couple backup questions if there aren't any that come to mind for participants.
Yeah, look for our audience. Do they have any questions that they want us to answer?
So far, all I am seeing is, just wanting links to the articles referenced.
Yes. So I will just put that as we wait. Let me stop sharing my screen. Yeah, I will just show that.
And I know we've covered a lot, and kind of a range of topics here, both very deep into marketing analytics, but also just kind of high level, like what is the importance? So if anybody has questions along.
So
spectrum.
Yeah, I think somebody has already posted that, right? But yeah, let me just repost this. Yes, so someone has already found the article. Yeah, but this is I just posted in our chat. You can take a look.
Great. Well, I will go ahead with some of the extra questions I had, but if I see any others in the chat, then I will pivot to that. So we talked about kind of maintaining and retaining customer trust as it relates to marketing analytics, and sometimes these, experimental ideas in marketing analytics. So I'm just curious, what are ethical considerations when using like big data as it relates to consumers and individual level?
Yes, this is a very important question, right? Because I talk about how we can push boundaries in using cloud, and you may be wondering, well, I have some regulations that I cannot violate. How do I know that if I put data on cloud, that is going to still be maintained? The answer to that is that I will give you a simple example, like AWS. So they are operating where you can store your data, where you can analyze. And what they try to do is get an opinion from a range of customers. What do you need? So simple example could be, well, I am storing data about, I'm not saying that is happening, but I'm storing data about President of the United States, which means you cannot store that data offshore. Well, yes, we have that in-house. All you need to do is make sure that you choose the right privacy. So remember that if you're storing data from a couple of places, then if you are storing it in cloud, what happens is that that data is going to be replicated. And sometimes the data location have their own restriction in the country or in the state. So you need to make sure that you all check that. But when customer understand that, well, this is how we use it, it's very clear what you are going to use their data for, and it's very clear how their data is stored, they'll give them a sense of relief, and they will trust you, and make sure that you don't betray their trust, because if one story got out, then the bad news is that probably everybody is going to stop using your services in terms of using their data. So yeah, so we have to be careful of how we ethically use the data, because that is a huge part of how you get good data from your customers. Otherwise, we cannot use the right data.
Great, thank you for that. So I'm just kind of hearing the level of privacy, transparency with your customers, consent of those customers, and recognizing the power that this data can have, but with great power comes great responsibility.
Yes. You know, there is many regulations that are coming in place now. For example, if I am an employee in your organization and for some reason I have to leave, should I leave my data with you, or do I have full control of saying that, well, you can delete my data? And the answer is yes. Well, not the company data, but as long as this is my personal data, I have full control of telling you that, well, I don't want you to store my data. Please get rid of my data. Because we know, if you know person, you have his data, you can influence that person in the positive and negative direction. So we don't want our data to fall into the wrong hands. And that is really important.
And so talking about customer data, I think you touched originally on, ideally first-party data provided by the customer with access, transparency, and the ability to change or delete that. What can you speak to for the value and use of something like metadata? And maybe you could describe metadata for those who may.
Yeah, this is a very good question, right? Because what happened is that employees come and leave. So let's say person A, person B, person C are responsible for building how we collect our data. What happened in reality is that these three individuals are not going to stay forever there. So they are going to either move up to managerial roles, or they are going to change place of work. Now, the question is, how do we make sure that that data is still usable? For example, because of privacy, they type something that you cannot just quickly see its meaning. Let's see, a variable called S. What does that mean? So what we normally do is we try to attach metadata to each data we're creating, And that will give us a sense of when it is created, why it is created, and how to properly use it. And if there is restrictions or regulations, make sure that you are following the regulations of using the data. So that is really powerful. Otherwise, they will live with their data because we don't know how to use it if they are leaving the company.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you for lending all of your knowledge to us and answering a myriad of questions related to marketing analytics. I guess I'll just ask if there's anything that you want to add. I see that we have, less than 10 minutes left. Again, anybody chime into the chat if you have questions, but is there any final thoughts that you have, Professor?
Yeah, I believe there is one question from our audience that said, are there, you can go ahead and read it.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Are there any open source analytics tools for businesses or organizations with smaller budgets where industry tools like SaaS might be cost prohibitive and where they may not have the coding expertise to use something like Python or R?
Yes. So, yeah, this is a very good question, right? You want to make sure that you leverage on these tools, but are they free open source that you're a small business, you don't have, for example, the license could be costly, and maybe you're just starting your business, but you want to make sure that you do use analytics. The answer is yes. Are they really, really powerful? Well, that depends on what you want to do with your data. So a simple example I would think of is, of course, you already put that. So for example, we can use R, but that requires a bit of coding. We can use Python. Well, that is also require a bit of coding. But what we are seeing now is these two platforms. So let me say R, they are trying to make sure they create something that people with less experience in coding can use. So for example, Shiny R that you can use to create cool things. You don't have to have a bunch of experience on doing that. And they are trying to make sure that if you know Python, but you don't know R, do I really need to go and study R for 3 months just to use it in my business? The answer is no. They are now collaborating so that you can just type what you know in Python, but bring it into R so that they can, so that you can create what you want to create in R. So yes, many things are coming out, but popular ones, because of the maintenance and stuff, the popular ones that we are currently seeing now is Python and R, which is really open, but they are requiring a bit of coding. But yes, they are trying to improve by providing something you can just point and click. And one thing I would add here is that, well, if you're trying to use data analytics or predictive analytics, you can even use Excel. I believe everybody has Excel on his computer. So it's not that you have to have sophisticated software. The answer is, do you know what you want to do? If that is a yes, then you don't have to go and use R or Python. You can use as simple as Excel to create something that's really nice and that will impact your business.
Great, yeah, and I mean, anecdotally, I have used RStudio to help generate through point and click the code that I could then replicate to, merge spreadsheets again in the future and just kind of update that spreadsheet title. So there are ways to even use the point and click to teach yourself to code. And then to your point with Excel, I know they have at least modules in there for linear regression and regression analysis. So there are some of those predictive model extensions available in there.
Sure. Yes.
Well, not seeing any more questions, and apologies for the light on my end. That was kind of unexpected, but thank you so much for just taking the time to speak with us. Thanks to all the participants who joined. We'll stay online for the next 5 minutes in case other questions come up. But maybe you'd be willing to also share your information, Professor Usman, in case people have questions after the fact.
Yes.
I'm happy to drop my email in the chat as well for what it's worth, and connect you with a true expert in this. But happy to, if anybody's interested in the MMA program, I can speak to my experience. And thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Emily. And yeah, definitely if they need any of the resources we have here, I can definitely share with them. So yeah, feel free to reach out to her and you know where to find me if you need something from me. And if I don't have the available resources you're looking for, I should know where to direct you. So yeah, we can be a resource.
And thank you everybody for joining us.
So Emily, as we are waiting for some questions, if there's any question coming up, do you think of anything in terms of neural networks? So I share something that most of the time I get a wow. Let me go back to that slide. I want to share something with you. So do you ever think of where we use something like this?
I think about the customer journey when I think
Yep.
about neural networks. So at what touch point, are they engaged and do they convert to that next? And so in my world, I live in higher ed marketing. And so it's kind of like, how did this person engage and what would be kind of the next step in that journey? Will they convert? Is it, but actually I tend to really lean more into the I like logistic regression a lot, which is not neural network, but they kind of in my mind play into each other. Like neural network is a much more complicated model and algorithm as it relates to kind of logistic regression, which is ultimately, will this person take the intended action? Yes, no, kind of thing, right? And that speaks to the likelihood stat that you were looking at earlier.
Yes. So yeah, so neural network, like you said, it looks complicated, but the good news is that you can use it as a binary output. So for example, if you're trying to predict whether a customer is going to do something by his activity on the website, you have your website for your business, and you are monitoring how people interact with your website, you can kind of understand if they are probably going to make a purchase or probably they are going to leave. So yes, it doesn't have to look very complicated, but it is so powerful that you can do simple things with that, and you can do even complicated things with that. So yeah, it's a good thing to look at.
And really what I've taken away from this conversation as well is even looking at the research related to healthcare treatment application and thinking of that through the marketing lens. I mean, that really, and to your point, like AI and machine learning in consumer products, how do we study that research and kind of extrapolate the findings from that as it applies to marketing? So I've taken a lot out of this as well.
Yeah. It's important. I was once in a conference some time ago about the pharmaceuticals, and one of the presenters was kind of, why are not marketers looking at this company? I mean, he highlights how much money is needed or how much money is put when you want to create a new drug. It's like billions of dollars. And he was like, well, I don't know. This is where the money is. Why are people looking somewhere else? Please come here, because I mean, we have to have pharmaceuticals. There is no way pharmaceuticals is going away. So if we can target right customers by just making sure that we offer best services, it is going to be a life-changing marketing. Because like I said, it's one of the best field you can hope to have customers there. You don't want people to be sick, but you hope to be a part of revenue generators in that field.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, I got a question. Somebody said with some courses being asynchronous and online, do you feel disconnected from your professors or classmates? And from the student perspective, I would say no. I feel that the online environment actually really helps me focus on exactly what needs to be done. And the group work that is facilitated through the courses is really what has helped contribute to my overall network of, other working professionals, people in the program. Like right now, for example, I'm in the practicum course, the analytics practicum course, and I'm working with MBA students, MMA students, working with the professor. So there really is that high level of engagement as it relates to coursework, course conversation, and just facilitating those learning experiences. There's another question. Have you read any good books related to marketing analytics recently? And I'll put that to you first, Professor Usman. I have an answer, but.
Yes, so what is happening right now is that this is like I said, a really emerging field, because before people think that when we say analytics, that is enough. Everything in analytics is good. But now trying to do a subsetting of this analytics, like risk analytics, like marketing analytics, like whatever, it's bring whole attention to, can we really have a subfield coming from just general analytics? So I would say most of the books I read, because I teach analytics in general, are generic, but I always look at how do I impact marketers, how do I impact, for example, non-marketers. So most of my research is open. It's not just restricted to marketing analytics, but yeah, I am doing some pure research on marketing. So most of the time I brought my thinking, not just marketing analytics. So I don't usually read only books on marketing analytics, but I read generic book and then try to see how can we use it in marketing or financial or whatever sector. So my answer is I don't read particularly marketing analytic books right now, but we are helping the field grow. So how do we see, what can I, based on my expertise, what can I do to improve how people look at this marketing analytics? So this is what we are currently doing. For example, I can share a little bit of my experience. I know you have something, sorry, but a little bit of my experience is that right now I'm working on a project where we are trying to help see if we can identify a customer intent based on his activity on a website. So we have this data, and now we are trying to classify whether he's going to make a purchase or just leave the website without buying. And we are using a lot of tools, but we are trying to see, can we get a good result in this sense? Yes, Emily, I know you have something you want to say.
Oh, I was going to say, I find that Malcolm Gladwell writes a lot on these kind of social science topics, and I see the application of that to marketing. In particular, his book, it's a little bit older, I want to say it was 2009, but The Tipping Point kind of touches on the psychology of what it takes for something to go from like good to great. And so a lot of those principles apply to, I think, the world of marketing analytics. And then the other that and I might be wrong with the exact title of this, but I want to say it's called like The Power of Habit. And that kind of touches on, again, that consumer behavior, that customer intention, like psychological aspects as it relates to quantifying information. So those are two suggestions I have for just kind of like, they're generally social science, but you can see the application to marketing. So I didn't mean to cut you off, professors, and those are just two that I have actually audiobooks, Audible on. So when I'm walking the dog, I just listen to, social science books. And then the last question we've got, and I think we'll have to cut it because we're over time, is what is the primary difference between statistics and analytics? Do you use the same or different tools for both?
This is very good. I think we can quickly answer this before we wrap this up. So yeah, this is a very good question. What is the difference between statistics and marketing analytics? The answer is, well, what do you define as statistics? What do you define as marketing analytics? Statistics is a way we summarize data to come up with some meaningful information. But in marketing analytics, you are not only using statistics, keep that in mind. You have a bunch of things that you have to use in trying to come up with a decision. So for example, like you give example of two books that you're reading that are really encouraging in terms of how you can view marketing analytics or marketing in general. So when you are doing marketing analytics, it's wider than just using statistical tool. For example, how do I know that this is the right question to be asked? We are trying to make sure that we are generating more revenue. Well, from statistical perspective, how do you define that? You have to have some understanding of the right questions and the business background in order to ask the right question. The second thing that comes into play is, what do I use? For statistics, you can say, well, I have X, Y, Z, I have cells, whatever. Then I can summarize, I can do things, I can come up with conclusion. The question here is that, well, what is the right thing that we need in order to solve our problem? Most of the time, these things are not something we store in our database or not something we store in an Excel file. No, we have to find a way to define it. So simple example would be customer retention. You want to make sure that you keep your customers. Well, normally we don't keep customer retention value in any of our database. So we have to know the right way to define that. And that requires a bit of understanding of marketing in order to define the good KPIs that goes into a statistical summary. I hope that helped a little bit with the difference.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. One is kind of the pure application of math as it relates to theory, and the other is kind of this, I would call it a beautiful mix of art and science. Like there is your intuition, but you need, the intuition helps to know where to apply the mathematical concepts, and when it's pertinent and when it's relevant. Is that fair to say?
That is true.
Well, thank you, everybody. I think we're going to end on that note, but wonderful questions. Thank you, Professor Usman. Thank you, Allison, and for the opportunity to moderate. I took a lot from this, and I hope other participants did as well.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night and a great weekend.